Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a long overdue review of the IDW current Transformers series. Since my move to Japan, I have been falling behind on reviewing this series, but I said I'd review it all, so here we are. There is the issue where there is too many to review in one sitting, so today we're going to just wrap up the Cracks Beneath Your Feet story arc, issues 8 through 11. Now, issue 7 was also part of that, but we reviewed that last episode. Overall, my thoughts on the current IDW Transformers series can be summed up as follows. Megatron Origin did more world building, told a better story, and got more done in 4 issues than this series has done in 11. Much more, in fact. It's been confusing, it's been dragged out. In fact, I don't even know how it's possible for something dragged out to be so convoluted, because there's a lot of scenes where nothing happens and yet you're still confused. So let's start with issue number 8. It starts off with a fight scene between Cyclonus and Flame War and Shadow Striker. I thought it was a fine fight scene, but their dialogue was so vague. There's like just alluding to different parts of the narrative that just haven't been covered yet. And this has been an issue in all my previous videos I've made about this series, where they keep doing something. They keep throwing out more questions way faster than they're even getting to any of the answers. Let's see. We see a scene where Megatron meets with Termagax. So we finally see Termagax, and it's done without much fanfare at all, despite how hyped Termagax has been this entire series so far. And we see that Megatron doesn't really care about Termagax. He just sort of wants to have power over the Ascendicons for himself. Okay. Bumblebee is set to guard Megatron. Quake has disappeared. In fact, lots of people have disappeared, and I vaguely remember this happening in a previous issue. As the later issues go on, it's revealed that the Rise have disappeared, and I can't remember for the love of me why the Rise just suddenly disappeared. Let's see. Cyclonus arrives at the security building, I think, and reports to the security forces that there are these terrorists underground under the memorial for the previous war. And Freud is there, and Freud asks if Cyclonus has talked to Paragon, which is a name we haven't heard. And we already have so many questions in this series. We already have enough questions regarding around Cyclonus specifically. Who cares about Paragon? Shut up. Don't even try to throw any more. Ooh, it's another question. I don't appreciate that. This is very much heading in towards the territory of bad writing. So going into issue number 9, there are some references to a mission that happened in issue number 4 that I just straight up don't remember. I vaguely remember it just because I had to make a video on that issue, but I don't exactly remember the details. I don't remember why the security are hunting the Rise, so there's that question again. We see that Six-Shot is a officer in the Rise, and that he's been stealing Energon, or it's unclear if they've been stealing Energon or stealing Energon, monitors, Energon siphoners, which at the same time, who cares? This is issue number 9 of the series. Why are we introducing more mysteries? I don't think any main question from the first arc, by the way, was ever actually answered. Is this the second or is it the third arc? I can't even remember. We see Barricade join the Ascenticons, which is whatever, and then there's this joke involving a thermal lance where Sideswipe's like, hey, I have a thermal lance, and Windblade's like, are you sure that's a thermal lance? And he's like, yes, it's a thermal lance. And then when they're fighting against the Rise, Flame War shows up, and Flame War's like, is that a thermal lance? And Sideswipe's like, well, yes, it is. And that's the funniest joke in this entire series so far, and I am squinting in pain at calling that a joke. That's not a joke. It's just weird. Anyway, the issue ends on the cliffhanger where Windblade gets blasted like a cartoon. The building blows up and Windblade goes flying out. She apparently downloaded some information that won't be relevant for the rest of this arc. Like, someone will pop it up to Orion Pax later. It doesn't matter. The whole point of this scene, so there is no payoff for this battle against the Rise, really. So that was a waste of time. Issue number 10. Things start to pick up towards the end of issue 10, but besides that, it's pretty lame. The beginning sees a silent protest for Rubble and Brainstorm. Elita 1 talks about how the Ascenticons don't do violence, and I'm like, this is issue number 10. Why are we still keeping up this charade of the Ascenticons being the good guys? Like, at this point, people should be At this point, we should really be further along in the plot. Like, not much has happened since issue 1, and we're on issue 10 now. At this state, I would not... I know this is in the middle of the review, but I just want to say that I do not recommend for you to read the current IDW Transformers series. Like, I know, like, the whole point of me doing Transformers lore back in the day was to get people to read and get into current ongoing Transformer projects, because I like to actively encourage people who like Transformers to read more Transformer stuff, but that are like new and coming out. But I cannot, in good faith, recommend reading this Transformers series. I'm only continuing this just out of sheer curiosity, as if this can possibly get any better or any worse, and because I promised on Twitter to say that I would review every single issue. Compare my energy and enthusiasm right now to my energy and enthusiasm in the first episode of this series of reviews. A lot has changed since then. After the protest, let's see, they throw in the thermal lance joke again, where Sideswipe's like, this person knew what a thermal lance was, and I just hated seeing it brought up again. Freud talks more about Paragon, which, like, shut up, I don't care. Cyclonus mentions that Pyra Magna killed Paragon, shut up, I don't care. I think the IDW 1 universe started to go really downhill about the time Pyra Magna came into the fold. Pyra Magna is one of my not least favorite, most hated character in Transformers. But them just dropping Pyra Magna's name every now and then like she's an important person just makes me groan. So shut up about Paragon, shut up about Pyra Magna, shut up about trying to start any more subplots and mysteries when there is already so many that you really can't... If you drop a mystery, the soonest this series gets to addressing it ever again, even just paying lip service to it, is probably about 2 issues later. Like, this series does not know what pacing is. It just does not know. There's a Senate meeting with Megatron and Orion Pax and the other senators, including Heretic for some reason. Like, I think we're just throwing in James Roberts OCs just for fun now, because there's no reason for Heretic to be a senator. But they mentioned stuff like riots in Tarn, and like how a police officer was injured and stuff. And I'm like, why aren't we seeing more of the narrative of this unrest in society? Why aren't we seeing the riots in Tarn? Why aren't we seeing how the government is treating Ascenticons or other average people to understand why people are so upset? Why are we seeing the most boring perspectives from... Sure, we know the characters, but that doesn't mean their perspective is interesting in the current non-war situation. So why aren't we seeing that stuff? Why in Megatron Origin you saw bits and pieces of society from the top to the very bottom, and you understood why society was like that, why there was discontent, and you understood how it was going to be like a time bomb waiting to happen. In this series, you have a little scene where Freud talks about how society is going to start bubbling up and rebel at some point, but I see no reason for that to happen. So what is going on? This still is a society where only the crime rate consists of 2 people dying for the first time in a long, vague amount of time. So it's still a relatively safe society. It doesn't warrant the amount of unrest we are currently seeing in Cybertronian society in this series. There's a scene of Bumblebee and Elita 1 pushing back protesters, and Bumblebee's like, this is terrible, do you think we're doing the right thing? But it's literally the most tamest Bumblebee and Alita 1 push back some protesters. I think at one point they do the equivalent of tasing a dude, but that's about it. And then Bumblebee's just like, is this the right thing? Just shut up. We see a scene with, like, all of a sudden, right in our face, just like out of nowhere, Megatron visits Shockwave, and they drop that Shockwave is the leader of the Rise, put in charge of the Rise by Megatron, and that the Ascenticons are using the Rise to stir up unrest so that society will want to vote in the Ascenticons as a solution. But society already sees the Rise and the Ascenticons as associated with each other, so that doesn't work. Also, we've been talking about the Rise since issue 1. And in issue 10, we're seeing that Shockwave's the commander, and that the Rise are really orchestrated by the Ascenticons, which should be a lot more of a more dramatic reveal, but instead it's just sort of thrown in the middle of an issue. So this is when things start to ramp up, but also get more confusing, because like that was just a weird scene out of nowhere with weird pacing, because like Windblade getting cartoonishly thrown out of a building after an explosion is a cliffhanger for the end of an issue, but they just throw in this major reveal like it's no big deal in the middle of this issue. So again, pacing and how it weights the importance of its scenes, very weird in the current Transformers series. The security forces try to meet with Barricade, who's joined the Ascenticons, because Barricade was supposed to be with them on their mission against the Rise, but Barricade joined the Ascenticons, so Prowl's like, let us in, and Soundwave's like, no, and that all of a sudden causes this political catastrophe. Meanwhile, Sentinel Prime and his team arrive, and guess what they do for the remainder of this arc? Not much. The next scene, we see Sentinel Prime getting a briefing of the current situation, and that's all we see of him. After all the hyping up of Sentinel Prime, he arrives in the last 2 issues of this arc and does nothing. So issue number 11, it's getting very unclear as to who's controlling who with the Ascenticons and the Rise, and like, it's very confusing, the relationship between the Rise and the Ascenticons, and why Megatron is having this complete freak out, but I'm not really sure why. There's also a big political standoff due to the fact that the Ascenticons don't have the right to keep the security forces out of their headquarters to visit Barricade, but the Ascenticons are still keeping them at bay. Six Shot gets sent in. Six Shot, by the way, is so lame. It's so lame. I don't understand why Six Shot was chosen for the character to play the role he plays in this series, but Six Shot gets beaten up a little bit by Bumblebee when he goes in and steals Barricade from the Ascenticons by Megatron's orders. Whatever. And the last scene is Megatron giving a speech and changing the Ascenticon symbol to a symbol we'd recognize as the Decepticon symbol. But it's a cliffhanger, but so you would think it would be an important scene, but as far as I've seen, like this series weirdly weights the importance of its scenes. So it could just be a lame scene where Megatron just makes a new symbol. It's unclear whether this is the beginning of the Decepticons. Like, he doesn't say Decepticon, so for all we know, they're still the Ascenticons, just with a Decepticon symbol. Is it the beginning of a violent rebellion? The way Megatron words his speech, it could just mean that we're going to try harder in the political realm, guys, and not just be pushovers. So really, the cliffhanger, the final scene of this arc, the main payoff of the Cracks Beneath Your Feet arc is that the Ascenticons change their symbol. Yeah, I do not look forward to reviewing future issues, but at this point we're just here to see how far the rabbit hole goes. But thank you all so much for watching this very negative review of the current Transformers series. I will continue to review each and every issue. So at the time of recording, issue 13 has been released, so there's still a few issues left to review, but I just wanted to make these in a manageable time frame. Also, I want to review Transformers Galaxies, and I also want to review the current G.I. Joe series, which the first G.I. Joe, right now, worse than Transformers, if you can believe it or not. So yeah, But thank you guys so much for watching. Follow me on Instagram for pictures of my life here in Japan. Follow me on Twitter for memes, really. Join the Discord server, link is in the description. Check out my fanfic universe, link is in the description. And subscribe if you have not yet. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great day, ladies and gentlemen.
Slick and wet and super soft all over.